How's it going, everyone? It's Nathan from Nathan's DIY Garage, and today I'm going to show you how to properly time a BMW M62TU V8. Okay, so first of all, this is for the Vanos engine. This is for the 99 and up, the TU model. This is also very similar, except a little more simpler on the pre-99 M62 and even on the M60. So what we have here, we have the main chain is in time right now. What we're going to have to do, where we've been having all the issues, is getting the Vanos properly timed. So we've had our China timing kit, which did not do a good job, and the jigs never would set the position correctly for the Vanos on the intake camshaft. And let me grab those real quick. I'm going to show you why that is. Okay, so here we have a few different things. We have our German Auto Solutions Vanos kit. This is for both sides. So how these work, these screw in. I'll just show you. How about that? These screw in the Vanos solenoid holes right there. And then this little guy here sits on there, and that little little pegs go in the hole like that, and that's how that works. Now when you're using the China kit bolts on where the upper valve cover, upper timing chain cover goes on, just like that. The problem with these are the bolt holes, they could wiggle. So it depends on where you tighten it down at. They could be just about anywhere. So these have a peg in the back side, and they go in like that and holds the cogwheel. And in theory it should work, but they did not machine all this stuff close enough for it to ever work. Let me take that back. It works, but the check engine light stays on for timing over advanced or timing under advanced, depending on which way you have it set up. So let's recap just a little bit here. I'm using the China block kit. You can see the blocks in the back, and they're numbered from left to right. They have, this is cylinder 1 to 4, this is 5 to 8. This is opposite of pretty much any other car. The driver's side is 5 to 8, the passenger is 1 to 4. Everything else is opposite of that, every other V8. We have installed the blocks on each side. Right now we have installed the crankshaft pin, which you go under on the X5. This is E53, and this takes a shorter pin. So if you have the long pin, you can either cut it in half, or you could buy the crank pin that has a little, like a hinge in the middle. You're gonna have to have that. So what I do is I take this. This is an 1/16. I don't know what the metric is. I don't have metric that big. And you turn the crank bolt, the big crank bolt with that, and I lay under the car, turn the crank bolt with my right hand with the ratchet while holding tension against the pin where it goes in the transmission underneath until it clicks in place. So I turn the crank with the ratchet while holding tension on the pin. It snaps in place. Then you go back and forth and make sure the pin is in correctly. When you know it is, the crankshaft's in time. Now, before you can do that, you need to rotate the engine, and you need to make sure that the little letters on the back of the cam blocks are facing up. They have 1 through 4 on both cams on both sides. All 4 got to be facing up before you can put the blocks in. If you put the blocks in, whilst attacking me, if you put the blocks on before you do that, it's not going to be right. So you're going to have the OT or OD pointed close to the crank pulley, with all 4 cam blocks, the lettering facing up on the back of the cams. And once you do that, you can drop the blocks on, and here you are. Now I've cheated the system a little bit. I took off the intake oil feed tubes, but not the exhaust. I'm pretty good at working around that, but you're probably gonna have to take those off. Be careful when you do take them off not to turn the studs out. Those are the valve cover studs that the nuts go on. Just be cautious of that. If you do turn one out, it's not really that big of a deal. You should be able to get it back down on there pretty easy by using the double nut system or whatever. So at this point, like I said, the crank pin's in. Both sides, the cam blocks are on, the letters are facing up on the cams, on the little block on the back. We have installed the chain tensioner for the main chain, and at this point all the bolts are loose. You can turn all 4 of them. They're not even finger tight. That one's a little finger tight. We'll have to make sure he's good and loose. Before you could do any more, all those have to be loose, and then you're going to finger tighten your tensioner, and just until you get it nice and snug. And what you're going to be looking for here, you're going to be looking for, let me flip this up, no slack on the U-guide side. So as you tighten this up, you're going to see the whole main chain turn as you're fingering it tight, and that's going to pull all the slack. You're going to end up like this, no slack at all, and the chain, everything is tight, top and bottom. Check above on this side and underneath there. Once you're to that point, you can leave it like that. The main chain is 100% right, 100% in time. That's the easy part. This is where it gets kind of weird. You're going to have a voltmeter to go any further with this. Okay, so before we go any further, just to clarify, these are T55 Torx bit, and I use one like this. You can buy this at Walmart in a set of 10 for like 10 bucks. Maybe there's 12 bucks, I don't remember. I use the adapter to go to my 1/2-inch drive ratchet so you get a little more leverage. You're going to break all these loose. These are all reverse thread. So you are going to turn them all to the right to break them loose. So all clockwise to loosen them. So the way I do it, I do just drop the crank pin in. That is, doesn't matter what other people say, that is plenty enough strength to break these loose. They're not that tight. This one, the factory setting is like 81 or 82, and this one's 90. So what we're going to do next is take our Chinese tool, and the German Auto Solutions kit, you're going to have a little wrench that's going to pop in here instead of using this. I'm going to show you why they have a wrench and China doesn't. So you're going to want to put that in there. You're going to take a 15/16 socket. You're going to turn this counterclockwise gently just until it stops. I've already turned this one. I know it's already turned, but you can see the inside turns separate from the outside. And we're going to set the Vanos timing by doing this. Keep in mind, all 4 of these bolts are still loose. So once we do that, we're going to get our voltmeter. And this particular one has a setting down here for ohms, and it has the beep feature. I bought this at Sears for it was like $11. Go spend $11, go buy yourself one. It's not the best one in the world. It don't have to be the best voltmeter in the world. It just needs to work. So we're going to go and put the negative on top of here like this, the positive on here. I might have to take this out. You can hear it beeping. We're going to touch it to that pin, the positive to the pin, the negative to that. You can hear it beeping. A little bit of oil on her. There you go. We're going to do that on the other side. You can see the other side, I think you can. We're going to spin that backwards. Just until it stops. Don't put a bunch of pressure or you're going to mess up your blocks. Once that's on there like that, we're going to take our voltmeter over here on this one. We're going to do the same thing. There we go, repositioned you. Take our voltmeter on the driver's side. We're going to do the same thing. We turn all the way to the left till it's stopped. And we're going to put a negative up here and our positive on that pin. You can see I'm moving around a little bit and it's kind of going off and on. It's because there's oil on that. But we know that's set up right. And just to be clear, if you're doing this job and you have bad timing chain guides, you will have to pull the water pump, you will have to pull the lower oil pan, and you will have to pull the lower timing chain case. That sounds like a lot of work. It's really not that bad, because you're going to have to replace the big U-shaped guide that you can see right there and right there, and it used like under the pipes going front to back from the water pump on back. So you will have to remove that to get that out. And at that point in time, you want to take the small oil pan off, like I said, clean out the pickup tube for the oil pump and all that kind of stuff. Moving on, what we're going to do here now is we need to Loctite. We need to Loctite these intake cam bolts. So right now, we can turn them out with our fingers real easy, right? We're going to turn them to the Tighten. See, I already turned it backwards. We're going to turn it Tighten, and we're going to slip this guy out without disrupting anything else. Pretty long bolt. You can see right there. We're going to take some carburetor cleaner. We're going to clean all the oil off of this. We're going to spray carburetor cleaner in there. We're going to take some compressed air, blow in there, and make sure this bolt's nice and dry. Then we're going to apply our Loctite. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back, and we have a little tube of red Loctite. You could use blue if you want. Red's not, if you don't overdo it, red's not as strong as what you think it is. It'll fool you. So we're going to take a drop. Now, just to recap, carburetor clean these off, took a dry rag, wiped them off. Carburetor clean these out, blew some compressed air in it. You can use a can of air too, whatever you want. Just make sure it's dry. You can just let it sit. Just make sure it's dry. Make sure it does not have wet carburetor cleaner in it. We're going to take a little bit of Loctite. About that much. You don't need to get stupid with it. Just enough. We're going to put this back in here, and these are going to be turned to the left. But leave it loose, just like that. Put a little bit on here. Make sure to put our cap back on our Loctite bottle right away. We're going to go ahead and put this guy back in here too. Now, the book doesn't tell you to do this, and I'm going to put a link in the description for German Auto Solutions. Their guide how to do this. Their guide does not say this either, but you must do it because 90% chance these bolts are going to spin loose if you don't do this. We've already been down that road many times, so trust me, I know. Okay, so we're finger tight right now. What we're going to do before we tighten those back up is take our voltmeter one more time just to triple check. And the German Auto Solutions has a little wrench you put in there, so when you're tightening the bolt down, you can hold back on the wrench. You don't have to have that. It's kind of nice to have it, but it is what it is. So ground out here. Okay, that one's good. That one's good. I'm going to turn that off. And we're just going to snug it all up. We've got our torque wrench, but for right now we're just going to snug it. Because once those are snugged a little bit, they're not going to move, right? And go and snug the exhaust side. And before you could do this, make sure that your torque wrench will click in reverse. This one does. This is a cheap Harbor Freight wrench. It actually does work. Most of them don't. So sometimes they have sales on these for this 1/2-inch drive or even a 3/8 you could use. They have sales on them for like 11 bucks. You don't need the most perfect thing in the world. You just need something that works. Okay, so what we're going to do here, make sure you can see me do it. I'm going to use both my hands when I torque these down. I'm going to put my left hand, if you can still hear me, on the back of the the camshaft block and hold it in place. We're going to go in different sequences here. Holding it in place. There we go. Okay. And I put both those at 92. We're going to do the same on this side. I'm going to have to move the camera to do it though. This side's a little trickier because we did not remove the overflow tank. So let's go ahead and do that to this side, and then we're going to time the Vanos. Okay. And if you're not a big dude, that might be pretty tough for you. You might have to have 2 people for it. 90, actually those are 92 I put them at. And that's pretty tough in one hand. So if you got some little baby arms, that may not work out too good for you. But you have to hold that back block. We've done this enough to where a lot of instructions will tell you to hold it right here at that. That doesn't matter, and a lot of times what will happen if you hold it there with a wrench and you're not holding the wrench, it'll actually bust a chunk of the head out of the aluminum if you let it rest against there, so don't do that. Let's see, so everything's locked in. We're going to take our German Auto Solutions Vanos jigs. We're going to screw this guy in place here. I'm just going to finger tighten it in there. We're going to put this one in here. Okay, let's get our little cog wheels. We have one up here. Leave those loose enough where we could turn that. Let's go and grab the other. Okay, so we're going to grab 1 through 4, and there's 2 different sides of these and 2 different ways to put them on. The last time I did this and I messed that side up. So we're doing it over. We're going to lock that in there like that. And these are marked from 1 to 4. You're going to have 1 to 4 facing out on the passenger side, 2 to 5 facing out on the driver's side. Okay. And then where I messed up before, we put this guy inboard, but it's supposed to be outboard to the outside. Supposed to be like that. Okay, and we'll snug those up with our fingers. And we're going to torque these to 30 foot-pounds, and that is also reverse. Okay, so we're back, and basically when you buy this timing toolkit, the jigs are like 70 some bucks. You can use the cheap China block kit, but taking somebody that's easy is quite a bit. They're junk. You got to fight them to keep them on there. If you get the German Auto Solutions block holding kit, you cannot torque the bolt against it because it's aluminum, it'll break it. But in that case, you could use a wrench, but you just have to hold it on your little hex. You can even put a wrench up here. There's a little thing up here, you can hold it by that. Either way, the job will be a lot simpler with the German Auto Solutions blocks, but we have a set of those coming, but they were a little bit behind on production on those. So, but they do have some for sale on the site. Okay, so we don't want to mess this up again. I'm going to make sure that that is latched in there perfect. We'll double check this guy and make sure that's latched in there perfect. And then we're going to torque these to 30 foot-pounds. Okay. All right, there we are. Now, at this point, we are 100% in time, and there's many steps to this. You just got to really look through the directions and be very careful and cautious. If you think something's not right, if you end up a slack in the chain there, just take it apart and redo it again. You can't take any chances on it at all. If something's not right or doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. The biggest thing that sucks about this job isn't taking it apart, is putting the damn thing back together, because you got to clean your gasket surfaces up, you got to clean your gaskets if you're using the same gaskets, and that just takes a while. So at this point in time, we're ready to pull the crank pin out, we're ready to pull all the blocks off. We could even turn the engine over by hand and then recheck for continuity, but that's not really necessary. The only thing I can tell you guys too, if you're doing this job, whenever you're putting the lower timing chain case back on, don't let this tensioner fall all the way down, or it could make the chain jump a tooth on the crank sprocket. So you don't want that. You could use a zip tie or something. What I do, I'll take all this Vanos stuff off, all the jigs off, take the blocks and back off, and I'll get the cover cleaned up, hold the cover with my right hand, I'll undo this with my left hand, and then I'll just kind of hold it up and slip the cover back on so it can't fall down and jump time. So, one other thing you need to look for too is don't forget to put your oil feed tubes back on. When you put your oil feed tubes back on, they're marked. They are different. They have a dot right here. That dot has to go to the front when you put them back on. If the dot is not in the front when you put it back on, you know, it's not going to work. It's not going to feed right. You could have a real loud valve tapping. Also, if you have bad timing chain guides, make sure they're cleaned out. They have little tiny holes in there. You can see, maybe. Spray some carburetor cleaner through them, run through your parts washer, whatever you have. Make sure all that's cleaned out. The cleaner you get this, the better off you are. One more thing before we go, if you are doing timing chain guides, pull the oil filter, let all that drain down there. I like to spray some carburetor cleaner down and let it run through the tubes and let it run out the oil pan. You could even take a little mineral spirits or even paint thinner, pour it down there. If the oil pan's off when you do it, it's just going to run out on the ground. That's going to flush out as much of those little particles as you possibly can. That's what you're looking for. Spray all this stuff with some carb cleaner, get all those little flecks of timing chain guides out of there. Then when you do put it back together, everything's good. Run it for 100 or so miles, change the filter, change the oil again, and that's going to finish cleaning everything out of it. So your total cost, if you buy the guides off eBay, they're $100 for the set of 3 timing chain guides. If your chain did not break, there's no reason to replace the chain. If it did break, obviously it's going to be broken in half. You got to replace it. So you guys are going to ask me, how much does it cost if you did this job yourself if the chain did not break? I would say by the time you got done, let's say you put new valve cover gaskets on it, they're like $30 for Victor Reinz. Got crazy, you put new timing chain cover gaskets on it, they're like 20 some bucks for a set of those. I would say if you rented the tools from German Auto Solutions, you didn't have to buy them. I don't know what the rental is, I have to look on the website. I would say you could probably do it for around $300, the whole works. You should have no problems doing that. And you know, if you have a lot of miles, you need to re-ring the Vanoses. That's kind of tricky on these engines. This is a pretty low mileage engine. We decided not to do that. So you could spend a lot of money on it. If you're not careful, you got to know when to say when. But I would say give or take $300 is a good market. If you broke the timing chain and it broke the valve covers, you'll be in at $600 or $700. Valve covers are expensive for these engines. Because of that, if your lower timing chain broke and messed your upper covers up or your lower cover up, you could be in at $700 or $800. Well, would a shop charge to do that? Well, if you could find a shop to do this job, which is what we're doing right here, if you could find one to do it, if one knows how to do it, which is getting less likely that's the case anymore, I'd say about $7,000 what they're going to charge you. Best case $4,000, but the longevity of if a shop doesn't know what they're doing, they get it. If they got it timed right, it's not going to run very long. They got to know what to clean out and what to do. So that's where you're at, guys. That's the video with the German Auto Solutions timing kit, Vanos jig kit. We're going to spend some pretty good time putting this thing back together, and hopefully tomorrow we can start it up and have it running. I think other than that, we're down to fixing our exhaust leak on this thing. A couple cosmetic things after that, and it's ready to go. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.